The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com. And by the Change Execution Group. Visit 360lifetransformations.com. Before we get into today's show, I want to invite you to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on a new platform. It's a text-based platform called Community. To join, all you have to do is text my community number, and that number is 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, October the 27th. I'm joined today by Brendan Riley. Brendan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Glad to be here.
All right, and you know what I'm starting with. The first question I ask everyone, who is Brendan Riley?
It's a tough one, but I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts, which is the fourth largest city in the Commonwealth. Most people know about us from the movie The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg about the life of Irish Mickey Ward. And Ed Davis, the former commissioner of Boston Police, had come up as a superintendent of Lowell Police. I've lived here all my life. It's where I work now, where I completed my education. I love it here. Proud to be married to Yanina Riley. We're a Irish couple, as she says. She's from the Dominican Republic, and I've got Irish roots. And we're the proud parents of Ryan, who's serving proudly in the U.S. Army Infantry Airborne Division right now. Recently celebrated 20 years in the healthcare security business, and I'm really passionate about the work that we do and looking forward to what the future holds.
Awesome. Well, actually, let's transition to that last point there. You talked about being in healthcare security for 20 years. So let's delve into your career a little bit. What's led to you being where you are today?
Well, it started back when I was a undergrad in college, playing football at the time, and this opportunity just kind of fell into my lap where I was going to be able to work tons of hours in the summertime, but then take the full football season off as I finished up my academics and my athletic career. And then when I finally graduated from college, I was given a full-time opportunity here at Lowell General Hospital, where I've worked my entire career at, and was given a great opportunity to lead early on. I believe I was the youngest person ever promoted to a management position here back at the age of 23. Thanks in large to someone I've worked with by the name of Donovan, who really entrusted a lot of responsibility in me and really allowed me to make mistakes on the job and really grow and develop as a security leader. I think my talent is leading people, projects, and programs, but what I'm most in this line of work for is the opportunity to instruct and teach and coach people in what I think is incredibly demanding work, but also really rewarding work. I love it. You know, there's nothing else I'd really want to be doing, and it's a challenge still to this day, but still as rewarding as it was when I was coming up 20 years ago.
That's awesome. And yeah, you really hit the nail on the head. I think with healthcare security, either you love it or you don't. You figure out early on whether you're going to have a long tenured career in the industry.
Right. And early on, I was just amazed by how much responsibility this role comes with, and the challenges of just intervening with people who are not at their best. And there's so much knowledge that one has to acquire and retain, and so many things in the security business may never come up, But if you have one of those near never type of events, you're expected to know how to respond and oftentimes lead others, healthcare workers, through a crisis type of situation. So I found it to be very specialized work, and I've worked really hard to develop a sense of professionalism amongst our team. We really target people who have that bachelor's degree level of education. I think oftentimes, I know that people have completed college. We're going to have the aptitude to really learn all of our routine responsibilities here. We really covet people as well that have military service. And one thing I'm gravitating more and more towards is people have really diverse customer service backgrounds. As we know, yes, of course, we're here and we're charged with keeping the place safe, but there's so many touch points we have with patients and their families to provide great service. So I'm really coveting that type of background now as well.
Right, excellent, Brandon. And you mentioned Brian Donovan. I'm assuming Brian's one of your mentors, but I just want to give you the opportunity to just talk about some of your mentors and what you've learned from them that you still apply today.
Well, thank you for asking that. There's plenty of people who've had a tremendous amount of influence in my life, both professionally and personally. Brian's definitely one of them here in the workplace, but kind of the first name that comes to mind when I think of myself as a leader is my old high school football coach, Coach A, Chuck Adamopolous from Central Catholic High School. He had just an amazing way of getting the most out of us and making us love football and try to do our very best. He made it incredibly enjoyable with humor, but he also was really tough. And I can remember just the cloud nine feelings of when I made a great play, coming off on the sideline and seeing Coach A there yelling and screaming, big high five and smashing me in the face mask. It was just such a great feeling of accomplishment and achievement, always right there with recognition and appreciation for us. But also on the flip side, he held us accountable. You were expected to perform at the highest level, and when you didn't, he let you know about it. But he let you know about it in a manner where you learned from your mistakes and you want to just move forward and improve. And that was always his goal. He just was an amazing guy to play for. There's no surprise that he's had multiple state championship teams at the high school. And when I got into leading, whether it was the captain of my football team or now even in the workplace, leading a healthcare security division, I want to be that type of leader. I want to be that type of leader that is there to recognize and appreciate a job well done in meaningful ways, but I also need to hold our team accountable. There's a lot of responsibilities that come to this work, and other healthcare workers across the hospital are depending on us. They need to be able to trust us to come through, and accountability is a big part of that. And I remember back in high school, some other students who were non-athletes saying, "Oh, you're all afraid of Coach A." We were not at all. We were afraid of disappointing him. And it's actually reoccurred for me in the workplace where, your secure officers are just afraid of you, Brendan. And they're not at all afraid of me, but I do believe they are afraid of disappointing me because they know how hard I work and how much I care about the work. So Coach A was certainly a mentor. Another workplace mentor I'd like to mention was a gentleman by the name of Patrick Canal, who was the director of surgical services here years ago. And I remember vividly over 10 years ago sitting in a meeting room with him, waiting to have an uncomfortable conversation with one of his workers. When we got to talking, and he really kind of challenged me and said, "Brendan, when are you going to get a grad school education?" And at the time I had no desire whatsoever. I never even thought about going to get a master's degree. And he kind of advised me that not everybody's got the aptitude or the opportunity to continue their education. And it got me to really reflecting. And it was really that one conversation that was the impetus for me getting back in school and completing my master's degree. The only person in my entire extended family ever to complete college. And speaking of mentors, I better mention my mom and dad, Betty and Charlie Riley, because they certainly had the aptitude to be well educated, but what they did not have was the opportunity. And I'll be forever grateful for them getting me to that private high school and getting me on a pathway to really be successful. And they were so overwhelmed with having to work immediately after high school they certainly never had the chance. So they've been huge influences in my life as well.
Awesome. No, it's always good when you can give the shout out to mom and dad. And, it sounds like similarly to me, they were willing to make those sacrifices to make sure that you were given a couple of more advantages than they had. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is IAHSS. You're currently the Boston Chapter Chair. And, that everybody kind of knows the Boston Chapter. It's a really big, really influential chapter with some great leaders there. Can you share your experience with IHSS and what it's been like so far?
Sure, it's been a great experience. It really just started with becoming a member and really diving deep into the guidelines. And that really changed a lot of our policies and procedures here in Lowell. No longer trying to invent the wheel here, and just getting that appreciation that the different issues and challenges we had were really international ones. And a lot of really talented leaders had collaborated and put together these guidelines. So we immediately started implementing them. I saw the value immediately. And then I mustered up the courage to go to the annual conference and exhibition years ago. And the reason why I wanted to get more experience with networking, which I know has been a common subject on the healthcare security cast. And it was an area that I thought was a weakness of mine, just because I was incredibly uncomfortable doing it. And to this day, it's not something that I'm, incredibly comfortable with, but I know it's an incredibly important part of my job. We had a vice president years ago here, and I remember him presenting to a group of leaders, and he had made a statement that, after the first 15 minutes, you better know something. And I've always thought of myself as that person that knows something, but I couldn't get through the first 15 minutes. So oftentimes, trying to socially network here with other professionals in the community was just it was an area of opportunity for me I want to improve. So I want to jump way out of a comfort zone, go to the annual conference and exhibition and meet people from all over the world. And I had grandiose plans when I got there of exactly how I wanted to do that. But I remember walking in the first morning and immediately just beelining it to a table and sitting by myself, giving up on the plans I had. But fortunately for me, a gentleman I know you know very well, Martin Green, came over and immediately sat down with me and just started talking to me very conversationally, and we kind of hit it off. And at the time, he was the president-elect of the entire association, and we got to talking about behavioral health patients, and he was going to be making a breakout presentation I ended up attending for the long-term care environment, which was, I learned an awful lot that we ended up applying here for our geriatric dementia population at a community hospital. Alan Butler is another that comes to mind, who was a real gentleman, sat with me, and we had a great conversation. And those two gentlemen in particular made it a really comfortable experience for me to start branching out and meeting and feeling a little bit more comfortable with networking. So much that the next year I applied to be a presenter. We had developed a secure behavioral health pod in our emergency department that really had great results for us on all aspects of patient and staff safety. So I put together a presentation. I was fortunate enough to be selected. And Brian, you were actually the person who presented me at that breakout session in Vancouver, British Columbia. And that was really well received. And that really was actually the gateway for me meeting an awful lot of people in my own chapter. At the time, I was not very well acquainted with people from the Boston chapter. But at that conference up in Canada, we got to, sitting down and talking with them, going for the great awards reception, sitting with the Boston chapter table and getting to know a lot of our leaders and talking about an accomplished group of people. There's just so much wealth and knowledge and experience here in Boston. I've benefited greatly from. You talk about people like Connie Michelman. She might be the most accomplished private security leader in the country, in and out of healthcare, with everything she's accomplished at Mass General Hospital. And that crew has been great. John Driscoll, Tom Mahoney, Danny Coleman, and the list could go on and on. The people from MGH have just been great to work with, so open with sharing information. Connie, Packard, and Billy Gibbons from Boston Medical Center come to mind, have been very influential on me and very open to sharing information. When we started our nasal naloxone program here in Lowell, we really kind of took a lot from MGH and a lot from Boston Medical Center to develop our program. Rob Devlin at Tufts Medical Center, who's our tertiary academic medical center partner for my hospital, has been great. Craig Forcina at South Coast Hospitals, we share a lot in common. We share a lot of information. And Ed Bortone and John Anise from Leahy Hospital Medical Center, I want to give a big shout out to them. They've been, great to work with over the years. They've hosted our Boston chapter on a number of occasions. Anytime I've asked, since I've been part of the volunteer leadership, they always say yes. They've been great to work with. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the one and only Mr. Steadman, who's so involved with the foundation and IHSS, and particularly our Boston chapter, attends every meeting. And I've certainly learned a lot from working for him. And I can't wait for next year's golf outing, the Memorial Challenge with Mr. Steadman. We're looking forward. It's going to be the 25th. We didn't get to do it this year due to the pandemic, but we're going to be full speed ahead next July.
Awesome. And yeah, a lot of well-known names that you mentioned there. And, I have to say, I had the same experience with both Martin and Alan Butler. I was kind of that person who was obviously uncomfortable at a couple of meetings, and they reached out and came and spoke with me and helped me really ease into the environment that I was in. So I can definitely relate to that. And the one thing I'll go back to what you said about Vancouver. Vancouver was where I first met you. I had the privilege of introducing your session, which was, number one, a well-attended session, and it was a very well-received session. And the thing that really stood out was that you were speaking. It was a great presentation. I remember you went over the time and it was going into people's breaks, but I don't remember one person getting up and leaving. And when you were done, there was a huge lineup of people waiting to speak with you. So, if you're looking to network, that's one way to go about it for sure.
Yeah, it was a great time, great experience at the ACE, and I hope we'll be back in person next year in South Carolina, but we'll see what the future holds.
Absolutely. And the thing that you kind of spoke about then was behavioral health, and you've basically become a thought leader in this area. Why did you gravitate towards behavioral health as an area of expertise for yourself?
I would say certainly necessity. I went through some really challenging experiences when I was new on the job, starting this at 21 years old. And actually I was attacked at knife point by an acutely psychotic patient in our emergency department who had supposedly been, pat, frisked, and searched by a local police department. But that was a big eye opener. I was very fortunate to walk away from that experience with my life. And I knew I lucked out. That was really the inspiration for me to want to learn as much as I possibly could about defensive tactics and also later on crisis de-escalation. But we started with Monadnock defensive tactics here shortly thereafter, and a master instructor trainer for MDTS by the name of Bob Dyer, who was on Lowell Police at the time, came in, and he really trained our security team in effective control and restraint, also blocks and active defensive skills that were really necessary in that era. So we were able to really protect ourselves and protect our other healthcare workers while also keeping our patients as safe as possible. But there's an old saying, if your only solution's the hammer, then every problem's a nail. So it was after that, a couple of years after that, that I dove really deep into de-escalation and learning as much as I possibly could, becoming a instructor in several different certification programs, and ultimately a presenter as well in many audiences around topics like extreme violence events or active shooter. But usually we start big with those scary topics as a way at the end to loop you into coming into our crisis de-escalation classes, stuff that's going to happen every day on the job here. So that's really why I got into this. And I think it's still a major opportunity area because healthcare can be so challenging, and we're oftentimes we have to be prepared. If you're not prepared to be in these situations, then you're going to be like I was back as a 21-year-old, just totally overwhelmed and at a loss for words and actions in really critical moments where every second counts, and it's a potentially dangerous situation for everyone involved.
And there's a few key things you have to kind of keep in mind when it comes to these situations. You really need to understand responses to emotional confrontation. And why is understanding emotional conflict so important?
This is where I always want to start in front of any audience, and really stressing the point that seldom, if ever, are we as the staff the cause of our patients or their family members' bad behavior. It's directed at us and it's terrible, but it's really not about us. There's usually so much going on beneath the surface. I was fortunate to learn many years ago that past experiences and unmet expectations are the root of all conflict. And we know that people's healthcare expectations in 2020 and beyond is perfect, free, and now. And nobody can deliver on that. So it really creates a perfect storm. And I've also learned years ago from the Management of Aggressive Behavior program that 20% of the population's primary means of communication is aggression. You know, not their response to bad stuff, really their baseline, their first tool of how they communicate with other people. And that's totally out of our control. And I focus so much time on listing the factors that are going on in people in crisis beneath the surface we might not see or know about, but they're really the fuel of the fire of aggression and violent behavior. Things like loss of personal power, being on an involuntary commitment at the hospital, fear, stress, pain, job loss, loss of a loved one, relationship issues, distrust of authority often extends to healthcare workers, poverty and homelessness, chronic alcohol use, substance use disorder, particularly opioid use disorder, undertreated or totally untreated mental illness, lack of resilience, which we're really seeing during the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the ties that binds our most dangerous people that we see in my health system is they're all survivors of early childhood trauma, survivors of physical, emotional, sexual abuse as young children. So kind of understanding these factors, I think, helps us as healthcare workers quit taking it so personally, kind of understanding where it's coming from, and hopefully set realistic expectations. We can't expect these folks to behave like perfect ladies and gentlemen because they're in a healing environment like a hospital, but unintentionally, that's the biggest mistake we often make in healthcare. And I love the quote, "Believing that others will react as we would is the single most dangerous myth of intervention." And that's from Gavin Becker's book, The Gift of Fear. And I see that occur in healthcare all of the time. So I really think we should learn to choose wisely what we insist upon from people in crisis, really work to negotiate with them, and don't expect them to be ladies and gentlemen, but expect to have expectations that are focused on everyone's safety and try to lead to what we call tension reduction in these type of moments, knowing that not everybody's going to cooperate with what we're trying to get them to do.
Absolutely. Now, with regards to intervening in a behavioral health incident, what are the considerations or important elements of a response?
So I think number one, knowing in advance what people in your care often refuse to do. What are the sticking points that sometimes might lead to further aggressive behavior? And know what your common refusals are. And if I was in front of a group of nursing staff, I know what the answers are going to be. People always refuse to disrobe and change into the hospital clothing. They refuse to take ordered medications. They refuse to provide urine or blood lab work. They refuse to stay in bed or their room. That's often probably the biggest refusal. They oftentimes refuse to discharge or transfer or transition to other areas of the hospital. They refuse to give up their belongings, cell phone being chief among personal property. I really think it's an extension of self right now. It's part of the human body. Or just to refuse with their plan of care, refuse to do things like ambulate and toilet, things like that. And I always encourage us as healthcare workers to know those common refusal points in advance of the crisis. Because when we do, we should have the answers to the test. We should have strategies developed in advance that we can calmly and confidently deploy in these critical type of crisis moments. So I really think that limit setting is just a critical skill to master here, and it is a very strategic framework. It's just offering people choices, but you have to lead with the positive choice first, always. As parents, you know that. You have to dangle the carrot. Otherwise, people are going to tune you out. So you lead with a reward. What are the rewards that you might be able to offer somebody in a crisis situation? Maybe it is those phone privileges. Maybe it's visitors and support people coming in. Moving through the process faster is really important. Time is the one thing we never get back. Food or drink, special activities, to be left alone by the staff or not to be jammed up with the police and have it become a law enforcement type of situation. But with limit setting, I'm a fan of some of the CPI, NCI tenets. Simple and clear, reasonable, and enforceable. I'm a big fan of scripted language. If I was giving somebody a limit, it's always going to include a transition statement. But if you choose not to, that reminds the individual it's their choice. They're the decision maker here, not me. I'm just providing the information. And a big one is allow time and space for reflection. Years ago, we used to just say, okay, this or that, decide. But no important decision in your life you want to make in a snap of the fingers. So it became more of a strategy to frame the limit and say, we're going to give you a minute to think about it. We'll be back and you'll let us know what you decide. So I think the more strategic we can be in limit setting, this is what I'm trying to really put out there for healthcare audiences, and I've seen it be effective when it's applied pretty consistently and strategically, because keep in mind, these are stressful events. You're never going to be your best. You might not be as slick with your limit setting as you were in a classroom when it's somebody that's really aggressive and propensity for violence towards us or self-injury, and it's those type of situations. So the more practice one can be, the better off you're going to be in those crisis moments.
And obviously you touched on limit setting quite a bit there. What are some of the other important considerations when it comes to setting limits?
I think most important are empathy and non-judgment. People can pick up whether you care about their situation, whether you're trying to relate with them or if you're just doing a job. So listing those factors that I mentioned earlier about a lot of the stuff folks are struggling with, that helps me, and it should help all of us have that secret ingredient of empathy for what these individuals are going through. And we never judge, and I'll use substance use disorder patients as an example. I think that's often the easiest population that we judge, and I'm certainly guilty of it at times over the course of my career. But these people in the throes of substance use disorder, it's not shoot up, get high, and party time for them. Not at all. And sometimes we might think that in healthcare. That's not the case. These folks are often using just not to be sick or not have to cope with struggles that they've had in their life. So we need to put the judgments totally aside. We don't know what's going on in that individual's life or what led them down that road to substance use disorder. We're there to care for them. And I think the more we can learn to put our judgments aside, and we're going to make mistakes. I always say, you're going to judge patients. I know I have. When you do, own it. Learn from it. Don't make excuses about it. Don't get defensive about it. Totally own it. Reflect on it. Learn from it. And commit it to doing better next time. Try to be your best self that next challenging situation without judging. And don't dwell on it. When you judge somebody here, if you really own it and learn from it, you move forward full speed ahead. Don't beat yourself up, because when people treat you terribly, it's kind of a human response and often a knee-jerk reaction to get defensive, to step out of bounds as a professional. So I think that's an important message for all healthcare workers to have, is to understand you're going to make mistakes, but you're really duty bound to be empathic and be not judgmental with these populations.
All right. Now, obviously, in terms of being empathic and being non-judgmental, they can obviously have a much better outcome just by displaying those qualities. How do we hinder these interactions by not taking this approach, and how is it helpful when we apply it?
I think it really starts with that mindset that we sign up to do this work and we're here to help people, and we know people are not going to be at their best. Nobody wants to come into the hospital unless you're having a baby, or you're visiting a baby, you really don't want to be here. So just having the right mindset that I choose this work because I want to help people, all people, is really important. And there's kind of two things I want to talk about. Number one, of course, violence is not part of the job. It's so prevalent that sometimes you hear that we just have to deal with it, but nobody signed up for combat to be working as a healthcare worker. So we can never just tolerate violence and assaultive behavior, but I'm on a mission to put this out there. Disrespect is part of the job. When you look at a lot of other customer service industries, you could go above and beyond to provide somebody the very best encounter, and they still treat you disrespectfully. And I think as healthcare workers, we have to understand that that applies to us too. But you can walk away from an encounter knowing, hey, I did my best. I tried to provide this patient or their family member a great experience. I was professional. I did not take it personally. And at the end of the day, I was still disrespected, but I walk away with my head held high, knowing I didn't step out of bounds as a professional. And then it just becomes a habit. The next time you're in a similar encounter, you're not trying to get everybody to cooperate every time, because that's an unrealistic goal. Not everybody cooperates, but everybody gets to what we like to call tension reduction, meaning they'll go from that agitated crisis mode into safe enough that we can all move forward with nobody's safety compromised.
That's an excellent way of framing it. Obviously, we understand that violence shouldn't be part of the job, but yeah, I never thought of it that way. Disrespect, yeah, it for sure is part of the job, especially with any front-facing customer service-related role. But I guess it's about not taking it personally and being able to still continue in a professional way.
Yeah, it's a developed skill, but the more one knows that you're going to be in these encounters, and that's why I always tell a story about my wife. My wife coming from Dominican Republic, a new American, she became a U.S. citizen the hard way. Years of process, thousands of dollars, and she's got her master's degree level of education as well. And to see her disrespected on a regular basis and treated so disgustingly by people over the color of her skin or her accent or ethnicity. I've been treated terribly, but I can never relate to what that must feel like. So I always recognize and appreciate members of our healthcare workforce who manage a way to rise above that nastiness and be their most professional self when they're being attacked over things like skin color, ethnicity, or gender even. I can't relate to that, but I'm inspired by it. And the stuff that I have to put up with, is hurtful too, but it allows me, I think, to take a deep breath, to walk away in those moments and be professional, because so many people in our healthcare workforce are attacked in just terribly nasty ways, but they've managed a way to continue to be professionals in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's actually room for a whole separate discussion about how you deal with those issues and how people overcome those challenges. I guess the next thing I'll ask you is, because we've covered quite a bit here, is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you'd like to discuss?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Brian. Like I said, I've been a fan of the Healthcare Security Cast. I've listened to many of the episodes, and I really appreciate the opportunity you've given me to just tell a little bit about myself, in particular, our strategies here in Lowell with behavioral health patients.
Awesome. I appreciate that a lot, Brendan. What are some of the things that we can expect from you moving forward? What can we look forward to that you're working on right now?
Well, I'm putting together a presentation for hopefully the next AC&E. I don't know if I'm going to be selected yet, but it's really kind of changing to the focus on the topic of bedside control and restraint. I think that's where a lot of the assaults and injuries on healthcare workers happen, is right at the bedside when people are trying to physically and mechanically restrain patients who are violent. And there's a lot of programs out there that are escort based that do a great job at keeping people safe, but there's not necessarily the focus right there at the bedside. What are the tactics to keep a patient safe, but keep a staff safe in those moments? So I've developed quite a bit that we use here in Lowell for both physical control and restraint, supine stabilization, and also how to apply the devices. And I'm really on a mission for healthcare to evolve in regards to restraint process. Even to this day, there's a big focus that the clinicians should be in charge of these situations. And I think that's why a lot of nurses get seriously assaulted and hurt. I think healthcare security has evolved to the point where we are hiring the right people. We're providing them great training, far more training on control and restraint and how to actually apply these devices as a resistive subject. So for whatever reasons, a lot of the regulatory world expects that nursing staff should be the ones that are taking control and applying these devices. I really think we need to evolve past that and put security officers in the primary role who have that training, who have developed those skill sets to be really the front line. The nursing staff, of course, an integral part of that process, but more to observe and direct as opposed to be physically hands-on with the control and restraint and with applying these devices. I really want to see us get there as healthcare, but I think we have some work to do. And I'm trying my best to advance that image of the professional security officer who's very well trained and understands this is the primary part of their job to protect. Other things I'm hoping to be able to do with some of the content I've presented for IHSS in the past. I'd love to be in front of clinical audiences, particularly Emergency Nurse Association and other entities out there that might benefit from a security leader's perspective. So those are a couple of things I'm working on. Hopefully I'll be in South Carolina presenting. That'll be out of my control, but if I'm there, it's going to be on that topic of bedside control and restraint.
Excellent. Oh, I look forward to everything that you're doing moving forward. Like I said, your presentations are always good. So there's definitely, and they always do well. So
thank you.
I guess as we're wrapping up here, is there a special message you would like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Just kind of on the heels of Healthcare Security and Safety Week, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there who's doing their best to advance this as our chosen profession. It means a lot to me personally to see the mindset of healthcare itself see us for what we are, is well-trained professionals who are such an important part of any healthcare system. So those who are out there getting their education, looking to advance, capitalize on opportunities, leaders, and also security officers, people who present themselves as real professionals, who are going to be in a polished uniform, looking the part of a professional that really cares about this work and what they're doing. So my message to everybody is continue to do whatever you can to advance our profession to the next level. Things as simple as using that term security officer as opposed to security guard. Things that simple to advance us to what we should be known in the healthcare system as years to come is really specialized workers who are so critically important to any hospital or healthcare system's mission.
Excellent. And lastly, Brendan, how can we connect with you?
Becoming more and more active on LinkedIn, Brian. So that's always a great way to connect with me and send me a message. And also throw my email out there. It's brendan.riley@lowellgeneral.org. So BRENDALLEYAT@LOWELGENERAL.org. That's probably the best way to reach me.
Thank you, Brendan. I appreciate your time today. And I think everybody will get some good value out of this conversation, as usually the case when you're speaking.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I really appreciate it.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thank you for tuning in. Join the Healthcare Security Cast community. To join, text START to 647-372-2042. Again, that's text START to 647-372-2042. Follow the Healthcare Security Cast on LinkedIn and Facebook, and join the Healthcare Security Cast community groups on both platforms as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And of course, you can always connect with me on social media. I'm the only Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton, on any of these platforms. For any of these links, visit my website, Brine, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton.com. That's brinehamilton.com. Thanks again for joining us. Tune in again next week when we have a new guest and a new topic. Until then, take care and stay safe.